to think about, how does the North make money? Now, this compromise has to do with trade, okay? And when we talk about trade, we talk about economics and money. So, how does the North make money? And for the most part, the North has factories or businesses it'll eventually have. So this is a more of an industrial area. Small farms, yes, but more of manufacturing goods. Now, on the South, on the other hand, they are more of an agricultural base, okay? There's my little pitchfork there, maybe some corn of some sort. Not so great at that, sorry. Or maybe that looks like carrot, not sure. But they are definitely agriculture. So North is manufacturing and the South is agriculture. Well, the North does not want, they want the government to regulate trade. They want the government to regulate trade. In particular, they want the government to regulate interstate trade. And interstate trade is pretty much the trade from state to state, thus the interstate. I always tell students at this time that, think about the interstate highway. Eisenhower created this interstate highway mainly to move tanks and troops around the country to protect our country during the Cold War. But we have this thing called the interstate highway. Well, there is a funny story in Hawaii, which, if you don't know, is an island. They, too, have an interstate, which I always think is funny. Their interstate literally ends because it doesn't connect to another state. But here in the mainland, interstates connect one state to another state. So that's kind of what the North wants. The North wants to regulate trade. They specifically want to regulate interstate trade and foreign trade. I should add that. Okay, well, the South, on the other hand, they are agriculture, and they are really into selling their crops, tobacco, cotton, indigo, rice, and mainly they trade with other countries. Yes, they give a little bit to the North, but for the most part, the South is going to trade with other countries like England and France and Spain. So they do not want the government to regulate trade. They do not want the government to regulate trade because they're afraid that if the government regulates trade, they're going to put taxes on their goods. So they would rather not do that. And some of the other issues that they have is that they are concerned mainly about these runaway slaves. They're very angry that the North refuses, for the most part, to return runaway slaves. They're very angry. That's my angry face, by the way. They're very angry. Okay, that was a horrible angry face. About the North not wanting to return runaway slaves and see them as property. Okay, so what happens is, obviously, like the other ones, we have a compromise. We call this compromise the Commerce Compromise. And commerce is a fancy word for trade. So this is called the Trade Compromise. And so what the Trade Compromise pretty much does is that it does these things. You might want to write this down. But first of all, number one, Congress is going to be allowed to regulate interstate and foreign commerce, levy or charge tariffs or taxes on imports but not exports. So in other words, they can regulate imports but not exports. So Congress or the government can regulate imports, not exports. And that's exactly what the North wanted, and that's exactly what the South wanted. They didn't want their exports to be taxed. So government can regulate imports, not exports. What else can the government do? Well, the government can also cannot restrict the slave trade for 20 years. They put this into the Constitution. The word slave is not in the Constitution, but they do talk about they cannot restrict the slave trade for 20 more years. But the Congress can levy or charge a $10 import tax on each slave brought in during this period. So for 20 more years, every time a slave is brought into our country, Congress gets to charge a $10 tax on that person or on that property. And then the last part of the Commerce Compromise is that slaves cannot gain freedom by running away. This is the infamous or famous Fugitive Slave Clause. This is the first one. It is with the Commerce Compromise that pretty much it talks about fugitives, which are runaway slaves, that they really can't gain their freedom by running away. And that the North, for the most part, is going to have to help return the slaves to the South. So that was the Commerce Compromise. Be sure to have these little charts, these colored charts, in your notes, and turn them into your teacher on the day that they are due. Thank you so much. Bye.